Welcome back. Let's start now learn about some more mathematical operations, and it is also about rounding numbers. And we have here been using a lot of mathematical operations, for example, plus, minus, times, divided, exponential, and so on. So we don't need to go over all those again. So let's start here with the square root. So just like many other functions, the square root is also a part of mathematical namespace. So here we'll just write console.log math dot square root of 25 here. See here, when we run this here, we get the 5, and the same could be achieved using the exponential operator as well. So here we'll just write console.log 25 into, so here 1 by 2. So when I run this, see here the answer is same. So we could now just work for the cubic root as well. So let me just copy this here and then paste it. So we'll just say 8 of 1/3. See here we got our value, and next up let's get the maximum value of a couple of values. So for that, let me just write console.log math.max of 5, 18, 23, 11, and then 2. As you can see, the name here itself max, here it prints out the max value in this, which is the 23, as you can see here. And if you just give here instead of 23 here this format string of 23, still here it gives the 23, as you can see here, right? So it does the parsing here, so it gives us here this output. And let's just also write one more console.log. If you write here 23 pixels, something like this, as you can see here, it just gives not a number because here it is not a number, right? So just as we here have the max, so we can just write this here with the minimum as well. So min, see here, now it gives the value 2. Okay. Now besides these couple of methods, there are also a constant on the math object on the math namespace. Example, if you want to calculate the radius of the circle with the 10 pixels, so we would have to do with using the math pi. So console.log math.pi. So when we run this here, you get the pi value. So now we need to calculate the radius of the circle, right? So for that we'll just write number dot parse float of here, as I mentioned, 10 pixel, right? So into 2, which is the formula. So whenever we, so here we got our output here. So this is how we just calculate the radius of the circle with this radius 10 pixel. And now the other thing as the math object is that random function that we already have been used a couple of times, and it is very important to generate random numbers when we need them. So before we created a random rolled dice, right, between 1 and 6. So let me just write that here once again, console.log Math.trunc of here math.random of. So basically what here happens is math.random into 6 here, it generates between the value 0 and 6, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the decimal values. So we remove these decimal values using the math.trunc. So it gives between the 0 and 6, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we need one more value. So for that we just return +1. So as we reload, as you can see here, the number here changes between the 0 and 6. Okay, so this is how we return our dice function. But let's now generalize this formula into a function that we can use a random number generator. So this is going to be super useful in many apps. So let's now just start working on this random number generator. So we are going to create a function. So let me just call here it a random int, and we'll pass in the minimum and maximum value. Basically, we want to generate a random number between these two values. So let's actually once again first call this function. So we'll just actually see how it uses it. So let me just say here constant random. So here we have the value minimum and the maximum. So using the arrow function. So before we write our function, let's just actually call this function first. So we'll just say random. So we'll just say random int of minimum 10 and maximum 20. And the same way here we'll just call once more random int of 0 and 3. So let's now write our function here. So we'll just say math dot random of into 2. So basically here we are just doing the math random between the 0 and 2, which is here the value 0 to 1.99 between this. So here we use Math.floor to remove the this point dot dot value. Now here this value here lies between 0 and 1. Okay, so if you want a value between 0 and 2, here it is not the 2, here we have the only value between 0 and 1.99, right? Because they are not integers, they are basically decimal numbers. So let's take the decimal part here using the math.floor. Now here we got now as we got here the 0 and 1 between the 0 and 2, because we removed the decimal part, so we can generate the two random numbers, that because here we have given here the 2. Okay, but of course we need to be it dynamically, so it responds to the minimum and maximum as this one. So the values of these inputs here. So for that here we'll just simply just remove here and then write max minus minimum plus 1. So I'll just wrap this in the okay, and also let me just console.log this so that you can see the output. See here, this value here generates, what happens is the maximum value in this case here it is 20 and the minimum value here it is 10. So here it generates between the 10 and 20, right? So it just includes 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So it gives us 20. So it gives us the 11 values. So here we just add plus 1 for the 11 values. And similarly in this case as well, let me just console.log this. So as you can see, when we console.log this, here also it generates the value between the 0 and 3. So let me just show you 0, 1, see here it before it got 3. See here 0 and 3 we got all the values. So it gives 0, 1, 2, 3, basically 4 values. So maximum value 3 minus 0, it is 3 plus 1, here it is 4. So it creates the random values between the 0 and 3, which are 4 values. So we are getting here. But here in this case it is giving the random value between the 0 and 10, but here it should start here with the 10 and then end with the 20, right? So for that what we'll do is simply just add a min. Then as you can see here the value gets updated here. Okay, so this works perfectly fine now. So next up we are going to talk a little bit more about the rounding. So let's just start by rounding the integers. So let's just say console.log math.trunc of 23.3 for suppose. So here it simply removes the decimal part. So we have another ways. So we have to round them. So let me just show you those. Console.log math.round of 23.3, and also let me just copy this and So let me just copy this and add one more time. Let me just say 23.9. So when we run this, as you can see here, this rounds up to the value 23, this rounds up to the value 24. And also we have a few more ways of doing this. So let me just copy these two examples here, and then let's say ceil, and also here ceil. Then you can see here these both the values here just went up to the 24 because it just rounds up to the value of next. So it just rounds up to the bigger value, which is the 24 here. Okay. And also let me just copy this once more again. Let me show you one more example. Here instead of C, let's use the floor. So when I run this, as you can see here, it floors down to the value which is the 23. So both the cases it just floors down. Okay. Now all of these methods, they do a type corrosion. So let me just show you here in this case. So for suppose you just given in this format, see here the output doesn't change. So it's going to work the same. Okay. Now you might think that the floor and trunk are very similar, and indeed they do. The same when we are dealing with the positive numbers. So basically floor and trunk both cuts off the decimal parts when we are dealing with the positive numbers. However, for negative numbers, it doesn't work this way. So let me just compare them here now. So here console.log Math.trunc of minus 23.3. So let me just copy this here and write here once more again using the floor. So as you can see here, this trunk, it gives us the minus 23 value, and floor gives us the minus 24 here. So now you see this one, just like we get truncated, it simply just removes the part, but it now gets floors to the minus 24, because with the negative numbers rounding works the other way around. So actually a floor is a little bit better than trunk, so it works in all the situation, no matter we are dealing with the positive numbers or negative numbers. So let's just go ahead here, and then in our random we'll just replace here the trunk with the floor. Okay. Now we are looking for a really generalized function here. So this random int function should work in all the situation, even if we give it a negative inputs here. So therefore we need to work with the floors here. All right. So the rounding integers. So let's talk about floating point numbers, or we could also say decimals. Now with the decimals, it works in a little bit different way. So let me just show you that now here. So now here we just write the rounding decimals. Now let me just write console.log .to fixed of 0. So let me explain you in just a bit. So whenever we write this here, we are getting the value 3 here, right? So in the decimal, we have to specify the number like this in the parenthesis here, as you can see here. And then on the number, we just call to the method. For now, here we took simply just 0 to show you the result. Now you see that with the 0, it is converted here to the 3, but it is in the white other than the purple, as you can see here. So this here, it means it is the string. Here 2 fixed here will return a string, not a number. So that is important to keep in mind. If we get here, so if you put here 3 instead of 0, see here now the value changes now. Now we get the 2.7, and then here it adds zeros until it exactly have 3 decimal parts. So let's do some more now. So by taking this as an example, so let me just say here 2.7345, something like that. See here, it just cuts. So whenever we take something example like this, see here, it just cut shorts the value here. And now we want to convert this string here to the number. So we can just simply add the plus operator here in this case. So when we add the plus operator, as you can see here, this converted into the number. Okay. See now here color changes from the white to purple here. So it just converted back to the number. So with decimals, it works differently with integers. That's once again because things in JavaScript evolved kind of in a weird way in this kind of old language. Just keep in mind that this here works in a similar way than the string methods. So this is a number, so it is a primitive, right? And primitive actually don't have methods. So behind the scenes, JavaScript will do boxing, and boxing is basically transformed to a number object and then call the method on that object, and then once the operation is finished it will convert back to primitive. And this lecture looked a little bit like a difference of a couple of different methods, but to make it a bit more fun, let's now apply some of this to our bankers project. And the first thing that I want to do is to round the requested loan amount. So let me just show you here. So let me just show you that here, JS. Okay. Now in the loan amount, so I'm just saying 150 decimal 64. So we are requesting the loan amount. See here, it is giving out here in this decimal point. So we don't require this decimal point. We will just do that. But this is just in our bankers application. But in reality, no bankers will just lend us in the decimal or decimals form. Okay. So let's just do that. So here we'll just go to the our code here, which is the button loan. Okay. In this case here we'll just remove the plus operator here, and then what we'll just do is Math.floor, simply just to remove the decimal values. So when I run this JS, here we log in, and then here we'll request the same amount now, 150.64. See now it removed the decimal value and just it gives us the only 150. So this works perfectly fine now. So we actually removed here the plus operator. So it does the type corrosion itself. So here we use the floor. Here we want to round the value down, right? So next up, let's use this to fix function or method to make our numbers a little bit nicer here. For suppose you're seeing 133.9. So here it should be 0.9 decimal. So to make it a little bit more nicer, so we need to change a bit in our code. So let's use this, and whatever we learned, this to fixed method to fix in our code as the three places, which is this here, this display movements, display balance, and then display summary. So which is here. So now we make the changes in our code. So when we just come to the display movements here, so as you can see here, this dot move. So here we need to change to fixed of 2. Okay, and then coming down to this display balance. So in this account dot balance here, we'll just to fixed of 2, and then coming to the summary here, which is here in this to fixed of 2. Okay, and also here we need to make the change. Yeah, here we need to do the to fixed of 2, and also down here in the interest part, here we'll just write to fix of 2. Okay, so when I save it, now let's just see. Now let's just log in JS pin. So here you can see right now, see here everything got changed here. And also let me just request here once more 150.64 for suppose. See here the value gets updated here. So this works perfectly fine now. So this lecture was kind of short overview of some more math functions, including some rounding and some other stuff like getting the max and min value. And of course, there are a lot more. If you need something like logarithmical functions and sinuses, then of course you can check out the MDN documentation. Okay, that's it for this video.